Hello here, and welcome again to another edition of the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robert Washett. Later we'll be joined by Abby Barmore. But gentlemen, the transfer portal is closed for business. It will not reopen again technically until after the season's over with. So that is kind of a nice thing, that we don't have to worry about following this thing every day from now until July. But it closed up altogether. 10 entries went in for Nebraska after the spring game, highlighted by A.J. Allen and Casey Thompson and that Stephon Wynn. A total of 21 scholarship Husker players have left the program since the hiring of Matt Rhule. You know, it started out with guys like Ernest Hausman, Jaden Gold, and here we are closing up with A.J. Allen as the 21st player Nebraska's lost. When you talk about scholarship guys, I think I've seen a graphic that said 25 players, but I did some of those names were like Mikey Pauley and, you know, a few other, you know, the kicker that went to Kansas, Charlie Winrich. Those were walk-on guys, but Nebraska, when you take the total sum, they did have the most departures in the Big Ten Conference.
Coaching change, so that, you know, you'd expect a lot of that. And good, these are good players. I mean, the guys you reeled off, those are good players. Even Gold. I mean, you forget about Jaden Gold, but that's a good. He was a guy that staff liked.
He was like regarded as the best prospect in that class,
highest ranked high school guy. But you talk about who were the best two freshmen a year ago for Nebraska, true freshmen.
Hausman
and
Allen.
Yeah,
where'd they go?
Yeah, that's because they went into the portal. Those are losses. I mean, when you rip through them like that, that's some talented players that got out of here.
Mm-hmm.
Guys you prefer not to leave. I mean, Hausman goes to Michigan. Gold went to, I believe, Syracuse, right, Sean?
Yes, Syracuse. Right away.
And we'll see where A.J. Allen ends up. But I read in your column earlier, you think those guys, well, A.J. Allen and Casey, end up in the SEC probably, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, Houston's a player for KC.
Houston.
Pretty much anyone that lost a guy that needs a guy still. You know, but Auburn's going to get Peyton Thorne or Casey Thompson. I think that's inevitable. Their collective is going to make sure they get one of those guys. And it's interesting to see Peyton Thorne go in. I mean, this is a guy that won the Sugar Bowl.
He was
the
Peach Bowl.
Sorry.
Peach Bowl, and that's the 11-2 season 2 years ago. Then they struggled last year. Yeah, Michigan State just incurred some significant losses. They lost their leading receiver, Keon Coleman, and they lost a kid named Brantley, who's a starting corner, in addition to Thorne. So I don't know what's going on there, but those guys are good players.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm going through the page here. So A.J. Allen, Jaleel Martin, Noah Paul-Gates, Casey Thompson, Braxton Clark, Logan Smothers, Sean Hardy, Stephon Wynn, Victor Jones, Richard Torres, James Carney, Alante Brown, DeColdis Crawford, Marquise Black, Xavier Betts came and then came back, or went in. Castaneda came back. Camonte Grimes is at Northern Iowa. Kevin Williams is at Charlotte. He left as an offensive lineman in the portal. So you know, that's just kind of Jacques Yant's at Florida A&M. I mean, Jacques Yant leaving feels like 10 years ago.
Really does. The quarterbacks, losing 3 scholarship quarterbacks in the span of 2 or 3 days.
Yeah.
I mean, you go back to Frost's first year, Sean, we were talking, there's at least 2 guys that left. Maybe
O'Brien, Jebbia.
Maybe more. I can't remember.
No,
but that provide. I mean, if nothing else, that provided a lot of clarity within that quarterback room now, where
that's a good way to look at it.
We know who the starter is. That's no longer an issue that we need to talk about anymore. It's Jeff Sims' show, and now the only question is who's the number 2 going to be. What I want to ask. So there was some questions about some of these guys that left, particularly the quarterbacks, Casey Thompson and even Logan Smothers. Would the door still be open to them if they wanted to possibly return? I guess with any of those players, but specifically the quarterback. What do you think?
You saw,
and do you think there would be any likelihood of a mutual interest in that happening? With the player?
Casey. I wouldn't think Casey would.
But Logan.
Maybe Logan.
Logan could come back and theoretically be the number 2 quarterback.
Yeah.
Without Casey being there in front of him, he went from at best being the number 3 to possibly being the number 2 behind a guy that miss significant time with injury.
It just feels like his exit statement that he
Yeah.
made, though, closed the book. He did wait a few days before he put out his official exit statement when he entered the portal. But I would love to know the conversation with him and Rhule. What did Rhule tell him?
Mm-hmm.
What drove him to the portal at that point?
One of the big things that we'll deal with as we go on in our careers, and as it is attached to the portal, is it's sort of frustrating because you aren't privy to those conversations. The conversation between the coaching staff and the player.
It's very private.
It's private. They're not going to comment on it most likely. So we're just sort of left to get on the microphone, speculate.
It's like trying to speculate what's going on in a doctor's office room. Like it's private between the doctor and the patient. That's a private conversation between the coach and the player.
And the information is critical. I mean, it's critical. Otherwise, we're just sort of less. There's some, like Sean has said, there are certain things you can surmise, and they're pretty self-evident. Like with Casey, the offense doesn't necessarily fit him perfectly. He's, Rhule and Satterfield brought in kind of a hand-picked guy. So Casey's sort of fighting this uphill battle. That's all. You don't need inside information to figure that
and
stuff
Torres too, like he's not a mobile guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a great arm. He can throw it. And he's not going to get the reps here to develop.
And the thing you wonder was Casey. So how extensive was Casey talking to other teams before he made the decision? I would think so, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
maybe he wasn't, but
somebody.
So Casey had an agency that he worked with that represented all the way back to when he came to Nebraska. There was an agency that worked with him at the very beginning.
What sort of agency, Sean?
Just a representation that helps you through the process. Now
they have those, huh?
Oh, for sure.
Oh,
gosh, yeah. I mean, Baylor Shireman at Creighton has a big. I mean, it's very common in basketball, higher profile. When you're talking about 6-figure contracts.
Yep. Yeah, you're right.
Uncle Joe and Aunt Betty aren't going to be representatives. I mean, you need like legit people making sure the deals are square.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And they can be. Sean, you're pretty familiar with it. They can be fairly complex.
For sure. And you got to make sure the language is lined up right. And a lot of these deals that get put together are for NIL with the collectives. There's protection on both sides. Like nobody has a deal that's guaranteed for like 4 years. I think Florida had one of those on paper with Rashada, the quarterback, and they realized how dumb it was that they had all this money tied to a guy that could just leave at that point. All the collective deals are generally for your length of stay, and they roll over year to year. So if you sign right now and go somewhere in May, you might be on a 7-month deal that would go May to December. Then if you came back, you get a new deal in January, or you're in the NFL.
Yep.
But it's very month to month. It has to be. The model is very month to month. I mean, AJ Allen and I wonder if they got their payment for May before they went in the portal
on Friday.
Yeah, I'm guessing they did
on Friday.
AJ Allen, Casey Thompson, they probably got paid Friday
and then announced.
Yeah, and with that, the agents or agencies, whoever they're working with, oftentimes just kind of put out feelers and say, hey, what would the interest level be if this player became available? And then a lot of times that factors into whether a guy goes in the portal or not. If they get feedback that says we're heavily interested and the market could be far more than what they're currently making, then that severely influences decisions on whether or not they're going to enter the portal.
AJ Allen is, I mean, I got to think a lot of teams would be interested in.
Yeah. No doubt.
That's a loss. And it's really interesting when you look at the totality of these names, you could really use those guys.
Hausman, first and
Hausman.
foremost. Like, I think he's the biggest loss so far.
I'm going to say AJ
opinion.
Allen.
What about you, Sean? Biggest loss?
Hausman's big, though. You're right.
Hausman, I think.
Just because of who else is in that room. Like,
this is what I know about Ernest Hausman. His visits he took were to Michigan and Ohio State, and I believe Iowa.
Okay. Yeah, it was Iowa.
But it was Michigan and Ohio State.
Wow, it was.
And
Iowa played pretty good defense last year, like number 2 in the country.
When I went through his follower editions back when he went in the portal, 70 different coaches in school started following him. Yeah. Like
these are losses.
Michigan looked at Ernest Hausman as the top linebacker in the portal, and that's saying. I mean, Michigan doesn't need to go for portal linebackers.
I mean, I know people are going to get mad when I say this, but I'd look at the team differently if it had AJ Allen, Hausman,
Stephon Wynn,
and Casey. I'd look at the team differently. I would.
I agree.
I mean, that's life, though. That's portal life.
Yeah, I mean, every team has lost
It's
significant
happening
pieces.
everywhere.
Like that's just part of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're kind of in this inside baseball. Are they at 85 scholarships part of things? And I put this on the chat. I think it's not really common for fan bases to really be this. Are we at 85 scholarships? Like people are like, like they probably are. Like, but there's a lot of nuts and bolts that go into how you get to 85.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's guys that took that retirement package, whether it's graduated older players that might move to walk-on status. Like last year, Trent Hickson did that.
Mm-hmm.
Then you got NIL. So there's a lot of ways Nebraska can be at 85. We have them at 88 because we don't know those final nuts and bolt pieces that would shave off 3 or 4 more scholarship spots. But you have to assume Matt Rhule has this thing at 85.
Yeah, or there'll be sirens going off at some point, right?
I mean, people like, we're not at 85 scholarships. What are we going to do? Like, I mean, it's like, I mean, that's how I feel like the questions come at you about it. I'm like, I think they're going to figure it out. Like, I think they're going to figure it out.
Yeah, I don't think there's a need.
But there really is like this like panicky feel. Like, how are we going to get to 85? Like, it's like this like huge like problem.
Right.
And like,
I don't
It'll always work itself out.
Yeah.
Always has, always will.
You know, what are the consequences if it doesn't? That's.
I mean, there are you can't get to that point.
Yeah.
Right.
Like,
right. Yeah, I know.
It's back to the plane analogy. You
Mhm.
have to take 3 passengers off the plane,
Yeah.
move them to another flight.
And
do
it
whatever
always
you gotta
works
do.
out.
You got to get them off the plane.
Somebody's going to take the voucher.
Yeah.
Somebody will take the vouchers and sit at the bar and hang out.
Yeah.
Robin,
Watch the Giants.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll go spend an NFL Sunday at the
Yeah.
airport bar.
we
Yeah.
talked to Pete in the O'Hare
Done it before. I'll do it again.
bar that we like to sit at. All right. Well, when we come back, we're going to segue here. We'll talk more about the NFL draft, how the Big Ten ended up in that, how Nebraska ended up. We'll give our thoughts on all that next. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. And we're back here on the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washett, NFL draft in the books. I am very jealous. Robin was down at the draft,
Jiminy Christmas.
eating
Yep.
barbecue, drinking beer
Oh, that sounds
with 150,000 people watching the draft.
Yeah.
How was it, Robin?
It was fun. I'm glad I did it. And I also realized that it's something I never have to do again.
Why?
It was a lot. So
Was it?
like day one was just chaos. Like, I mean, there were so many people down there. Like, and we made the mistake of trying to get up to so like there's the lower bowl or the lower section where you like are VIP, you pay a bunch of money to go there.
Mhm.
Then there's that next tier where it's the average Joes that get in for free, like me. Well, we got like really good spots right on the fence line
Did you really?
of that. And so like we staked out that spot, so we had to save it. So we were essentially like trapped with like thousands of people behind us.
Oh,
Like you're at a concert
And
and
once
like
you get up, your spot's
to
gone.
go to the bathroom, to get a beer, to get food, you're like knifing your way through thousands of people only to wait in line for an hour at a concession stand to buy a $13 beer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
Oh, there you go.
that got old quick.
Yeah.
Day two was way better because we just spent most of our time in the fan experience area and like
Uh-huh.
did all the
What'd you
events.
do?
I did the vertical.
Did you?
They said I got 33 inches.
No
There's no way
way.
I'm jumping 33
You went
inches.
33?
No, I didn't. I don't know. Their measurement was wrong.
You're a
'cause
Polish white dude.
my 40-year-old legs are not putting me 33
You're
inches in the air.
33. That's incredible.
Yeah, it wasn't. So again,
33.
but they made me feel good about
Did
myself.
your friends have good ones though?
No, I got the highest.
Hey,
And then
all
we
that garage
I bet
workouts.
Sean could hit 30.
Sean would hit 40. Those
Those
calves.
freaky calves.
I did the Hail Mary challenge where you throw the ball into the basket. Made my first one. No big deal.
Hey,
Listen, Rob had a good trip.
Long story short, it was fun. But I don't have to do it.
can you
again.
like see? Well, there's screens. Like, can you see?
Yeah, so like in the fan experience, they have like big jumbo screens with audio. So that's where we'd keep track of who was picking, and then whenever the Giants would pick, I just go over the screen. And
Did you see anybody like up close, like a player,
No.
coach? It was
now we were so far away from the stage. But after the draft, we went down and got to go right by the stage for the concert. I didn't go to the first one, which was Fall Out Boy. I skipped that one. But the second one was Motley Crue.
Gee, Christmas.
So I was front and center for
What
Motley
night was
Crue.
that? Thursday? Friday?
That was Friday night.
Friday night, Motley
Yep.
Crue.
It,
it'd be hard
Yeah.
to get out of hand there with this.
Tommy Lee looks a lot different than he was when he was
Does he?
a student at the University of Nebraska.
Well,
One of Harvey Perlman's proudest moments doing a reality TV show with
You remember Tommy Goes to
Lee.
College or whatever?
So there was a lot. It was noticeable in Kansas City how many people were there.
Yeah.
Just around town.
They said they expected, like vendors said they were told they expected over 300,000 for the weekend. It felt like there was like 150 on day one.
Is that right?
It was crazy. Just mass humanity.
Did you ever have to get an Uber?
No, because we stayed close enough to where we could walk. It was a long walk
I
because
couldn't
you could
even imagine.
you
the
could only
Uber.
go in through one entrance. So that was like the hard part. And it was like all the way around. But there was stuff all around the streets. It was fun. But again, it was just a lot. Like
That is fascinating.
$13 beers get old real quick.
25 ounces or at least
No.
16.
Well, I don't know. There's the little aluminum bottles.
So yeah, 16 ounce.
16 ounce.
Wow.
I'm really amazed.
Well,
by
Nebraska guys, two
Yeah.
guys drafted,
Back to Nebraska.
getting the ship back on the tracks here.
this. Yeah, that was all right.
but-
That was good. Some good stuff. there.
I just want to. You're the only guy I know that went. So
Yeah.
It was a bucket list.
actually, our buddy Mike Hewitt went too. I know.
Yeah. I actually saw him.
You saw Mike.
Yeah. So,
All right, shout out to Mike. But
Yeah.
two guys drafted from Nebraska: O'Shawn Mathis, Trey Palmer. Neither a surprise. The surprise probably was O'Shawn went before Trey Palmer. No Garrett Nelson drafted. No Travis Vokalek drafted. Sorry, Sipple.
You were right.
I just had to kind of
Really,
Sipple. If you,
Sean
if
was
you
really
didn't listen
needling it.
last week, Sipple had kind of like a stare down with me that Garrett Nelson was going to get drafted, and I
pretty
think Garrett's a great player. I just said I think he's going to get a free agent deal.
Yeah, and he did sign as an undrafted free agent with Miami, and he was one of the 30 people they brought, 30 players they brought in
For official visits,
for
they call it.
like you call them official visits. I did think he had a good chance to get drafted. Yeah, I was. I mean, come on, I wasn't overly surprised that Palmer slipped to the 6th round because you figured it'd be 3 to 5, and you never quite know.
Drops kind of hurt him.
I guess I was a little surprised O'Shawn went.
really?
A little bit. I didn't know if he would or not.
I mean, he went to the combine,
Yeah.
but so did Vokalek.
Yeah. But anyway, good for them. I know I did talk to O'Shawn, and he was relieved. I mean, really relieved that it's interesting how different players kind of handle the draft. O'Shawn said it was intensely nerve-wracking. I remember Lamar Jackson was a guy I'll never forget talking to him. He slid out of the draft, if I'm not mistaken.
He's still in the
Lamar.
league or not?
Yeah, he was last year, and I'll never forget the way he talked about that day. It was excruciating hell. I mean, he said he went and walked around the block and just he said it was terrible. O'Shawn kind of portrayed it that way. On the other hand, Trey Palmer was like, no, I wasn't stressed out. Whatever.
Did you talk to Trey too?
No, I read some comments that he had. So it's fascinating to me. I would think it would be intensely. There'd be a lot of pressure.
Think about JoJo Doman a year ago.
Didn't get drafted.
Mhm.
He wasn't drafted. Went to the combine. Played in the Senior Bowl.
Yeah.
But he still made the active roster
Yep.
for all 17 games in Indy.
How about that?
Blocked the punt, scored a touchdown. I've talked to Joe Doman and his family, and he made like $900,000 this year.
Oh, hello.
He had a
That's
good
pretty
year,
good.
good
Yeah.
rookie year.
So the draft, being drafted, is clearly not end all, be all. Look at Travis Vokalek. He didn't get drafted, and within minutes of the draft being over, he announced or it was reported that he signed a free agent deal with the Ravens, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
he signed with the
I mean,
Ravens.
clearly he was a priority free agent signing for them.
Caleb Tanner was
And a lot of
retired.
times, I mean, they were
I don't
all
think
that
it was a priority.
they were all that first day, so who knows? But like with Vokalek, I mean, he was in a situation where he didn't get drafted, but he got to pick where he wanted to go.
Oh, there are people that will tell you, most people that know will tell you it's better not to get drafted. If it's the 7th round, it's better not.
You'll
to.
still get signing bonus. So
That's what it is. There's the guarantee with being drafted,
I'm
which
telling you, I've talked to people who are very convinced.
Yeah, but if you get
that's
a-
short-term benefit.
Yeah.
Whereas going to the best situation for
Yeah.
you to actually make a roster, that's the long-term benefit.
Well, and what I've heard is it's not like if they draft you in the 7th round, they look at you differently than they look at a
No.
signed free agent.
No.
I mean, it's not. There's no pressure to keep you if you're a 7th or 6th rounder. Now, if you're a 3rd or 4th rounder, there might be a little more pressure on a GM to say
keep them around.
we better keep them. I mean, we took them, but after that, There's no pressure on those guys to say we better keep this draft pick over this undrafted free agent. No, there's no throw that out the window.
Brady Weiss, the long snapper,
Texans.
Did he get an undrafted free agent deal or an invite?
Yeah, so there's a difference between a free agent deal and a mini camp invite.
He got a mini camp invite.
Yeah, it's like Chris Kolarovic got a mini camp invite.
So only an NFL team, I believe, can only have 90 players signed total. And so if you get an undrafted free agent deal. You're in one of those 90 precious spots. If you get an invite to the quote rookie mini camp, you get invited for a weekend, praying and hoping that you might get a spot on the 90.
Yeah, right.
But it's really, really tough.
Yeah, right. It's tough for anybody to make that league. Yeah. The thing that always makes an impression on me is you see names in the late rounds where you're like, oh my God, he was good. Or
how about Mo Ibrahim?
Did not draft.
Not getting drafted.
Just not
one of the best backs in the country.
Max Duggan, how late he went.
Yeah. Max Duggan's like Deuce Vaughn, 6th round. You see Deuce Vaughn fall to the 6th round.
Deuce Vaughn declared he could have come back.
Yeah.
I mean, if he would have known that, you think if Deuce Vaughn knows he's a 6th round pick, does he come back?
I don't. That's a good question. And of course, he goes to the Dallas Cowboys where his dad is. But every year, that's what makes an impression on me watching a draft is you see these names that you think, well, these are great players, not drafted.
And then you see like 3 or 4 dudes from Old Dominion get drafted.
Well, you see some of that too. Yeah. You don't see
Giants took one of them.
Really?
It is crazy though, the grip of power the SEC and the Big Ten have on the game. And if you take USC, UCLA, Texas, and Oklahoma and add their picks to the SEC and the Big Tens now, there are more draft picks from those two conferences with 32 teams than all of football.
And the rest of the conferences combined.
All levels.
Yep. Yeah, the SEC now has had the most players drafted.
The Big Ten closed the gap,
Hold on,
though.
Sean. The SEC has had the most players drafted for 17 straight years.
It was like a 62 to 55 gap this year. It wasn't like the Big Ten.
Not a big gap.
I kind of would just like to see the Big Ten get it, because 20 of the picks were Georgia and Alabama. 20, 10 and 10.
Yeah.
And you see, like,
I mean, the Eagles took the entire Georgia 2 deep.
Yep.
I think that's when you talk about SEC, like arrogance. That's what like a Kentucky fan or a Mississippi State fan, and they're like they act like they're. No, it's Alabama and Georgia. They have 20 of the picks.
That's a good point, Sean.
And the other teams like SEC. I mean, but you could say that about Nebraska pumping their chest about the Big Ten's draft because
all the Ohio State dudes.
Yeah, there you go. 62, 55, ACC 32. Thank you, Megan. Big 12 30, Pac 12 27.
Yeah, think how many UCLA, USC, Texas, Oklahoma are going to come off that 30 and 27 right there.
Yeah,
that's a lot. I mean, it really has changed quite a bit when you just break down what these two leagues and how they've pulled away.
Yeah, I mean, it's where you want to be. I think that's where you want to be if you're a player. If you can't be.
I think it's another indication too about you look at Nebraska's issues, NFL talent. I mean, it's just so lacking, and this is another example of that where the best prospect on your team was a 6th rounder.
Both transfers.
Both 1-year rentals.
Yeah. 1 year. Yeah.
Like you want to look at Nebraska's issues and why they've struggled the way they have. It's that. I mean, they just don't have the Joes and the Jimmies. Like
100%.
That's what it comes down to.
Yeah. When people ask you what's happened, Robin, what's happened, Sean, to Nebraska, start with that. Look at the drafts and look at the lack of All-Americans.
All right. When we come back, we're going to shift over. I want to talk about something that they're going to be doing to the practice fields and the new facilities with the grass. We're going to hit on that and some other topics next. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. And welcome back here to the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washett as portal windows close. Coaches are on the road recruiting. Lot to hit on. I want to hit on this, though, because it kind of came out of nowhere. All of a sudden, the Nebraska turf management or facilities Twitter handle makes a tweet that they're bulldozing up the turf practice field, which, if you remember, they added that additional turf outdoor practice field when Bo Pelini was the coach. So you had essentially 2 turf fields side by side, the indoor field, the outdoor field, then a grass field. And at one point there was that old soccer field, the track infield. They could practice on that.
And they did.
So you had 2 grass, 2 turf. Well, now that soccer field, as you know, is the new football facility. But they have torn up the turf outside the Hawks Center, and they're going to put grass down. And a lot of that, I think, has to do with Matt Rhule. He wants his players on grass because it's better for just player. And you've heard Matt Rhule talk about this, Sip. Just his job is to make sure these players have everything possible for recovery and training.
I think it's what it's about that. I'm not sure I'm not convinced that it's safer on grass. It might,
better
but
on
I
your
think
joints,
right.
better on your cuts.
I think it's a wear and tear conversation more than that, but yeah, it's fascinating. So that's immediately to the east of the Hawks Championship Center. Yeah, that's a pretty extensive project. I do remember very well when they put that in.
We've seen them like throw away turf in the dumpster. You can reuse turf too. I mean, there's, like Cardinal Mooney High School in Youngstown had the New Orleans Saints turf from Hurricane Katrina. They like brought it up there and put it down out there. I mean, so you've seen people like reuse that. I'm curious if it's reusable or if they just throw it away.
I remember when they tore up the Memorial Stadium, like they did not this most recent, but the one before. I like tweeted a picture because there's like literally the field hanging out of a dumpster outside the stadium. It was like, anybody want some turf? Come get it. Like people were like driving down there and like cutting off like pieces for their man cave and stuff like that. So like,
good idea. I wonder if that'll be available.
It's messy though. Like all those tire and sand. It's not something that's easily.
But maybe people want that.
But yeah, in the stadium itself, they're on the 4th installment of field turf. So the very first one went in 2009. The second one went in 2006. The third one went in 2013. And then they waited all the way until 2022 for the 4th set. So they extended the third turf the longest of any. It's typically a 7-year product, and they went 9.
Yeah. And it showed.
And it showed. I mean, it was starting to look pink. Remember, it was like the Husker logo.
Oh, the red looked pink. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, what is this? Like a breast cancer awareness month type deal?
It looked warm.
Was like pink on the field. I mean, it just didn't look good. And because of COVID, they used that as like an excuse to like kick the can down the road for the budget. And they waited. They put it another couple years down the road.
So having a grass field out there, it's interesting to me because it is, I mean, you could have your special teams out there, when just head right out to that field to the east. Now, I don't know what you do now if it's raining. I mean, if the weather's bad,
you go inside the Hawks.
Yeah.
Or you can go in the stadium. And I think Matt Rhule will want to go. I think they'll go in the stadium.
I think I got to think they're going to practice in the stadium more now
to get used to the wind and the angles.
Yeah.
And
it's a major change, I would say.
As far as like going to grass someday at Memorial Stadium, it sounds great. I mean, you could like work it in with this college program, the turf management. It'd be the pride and joy where this in-house turf management program would probably oversee it and students would be a part of it. It'd be a big deal, but there's a lot that goes with that.
A lot of money goes into caring for a grass field.
Well, and
it does. It's million. You run into the millions.
Say goodbye to high school state football finals. You can't play 6 football games in a row and then have a Nebraska game days later.
Yeah. And we've seen examples of grass fields even within the Big Ten when like by the end of the year, like Northwestern's field was just awful.
There's just 4
like
in the whole Big Ten.
Visibly terrible. Purdue, right? Northwestern,
Michigan State.
Yeah.
Is Iowa.
No, it's Purdue, Northwestern, Michigan State, and Penn State.
Oh, Penn State.
I know I'm a freak.
No,
that's good.
That's good.
Good job.
But like, so you see, like early in the year, they're beautiful, just like pristine. But then come November, it's just hard to maintain those. And so you're going to have the other end of that where in theory it's safer, but when there's big chunks or divots out of it and bare grass, like, it's not always September grass throughout the course of the season.
Safety issue when there's divots.
Yeah.
That's a significant.
Well, look how many Nebraska dudes have gotten hurt at Purdue.
Yeah.
Warming up.
Yeah.
Because their field sucks.
DeBornay Pearsonell. Now I think it was on a sprinkler head or something. I don't know.
I mean,
we're far into the weeds of this turf. Michigan, Ohio State.
I mean, it's hard in this climate. Remember the 2006 Big 12 championship game in Arrowhead?
Yeah.
How bad the grass was.
Yeah.
It's ice.
It was like concrete. I think they've done a much better job of manicuring that field in Kansas City, but that year particularly was brutal.
Yeah. So like you said, it's hard, costs a lot of money, and you're not always guaranteed a good surface with grass.
And then, this is year 2 of this turf. So theoretically, Nebraska, to get their money out of what they invested into this new product in the stadium. They got to go 7 years on that thing. So this conversation is not really realistic to even think about grass Memorial Stadium because we're years down the road.
I think you're right.
I mean, unless Matt Rhule wants to write it out of his check and pay for it himself, but the budget's already spent the money on new turf that's going into now its second season of play.
Oh, that'd be incredible if he just said, "I want grass in that stadium." That would be that would be a massive story.
Well, he's got that kind of power. I mean, look what he did to the practice field.
Right.
I mean, it kind of reminds you like when Frost first came here, he goes, "We're having morning practices, figure it out." I mean, like head coaches get a few of those, decisions where they can make the call, and things like this are important. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think we're years out again. And Trev talked about it on his radio show.
Talk about what?
The cost of grass.
Okay.
And just
significant.
It'd be, that's why like high schools have field turf because it's a lot easier. You don't have to mow it. You don't have to fertilize it.
Right.
You don't have to line it. You don't have to maintain it.
Yeah, I don't have to pay people to do that.
Yeah. And so it's a lot that goes in, like it would be, remember Aviva Stadium? I mean, you couldn't even walk on that thing.
Man, don't even bring that up. That was unbelievable.
Like that was
unbelievable. That was beautiful.
It was. I mean, some of the best grass I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
Well, it was like a blend of turf and grass.
I don't even know. It was breathtaking.
Just like a giant putting green.
Yeah. It was breathtaking. That stadium is breathtaking.
I've never seen grass for football like that pristine.
No, I know.
And you couldn't walk on it. I mean, we did in pregame, but
yeah, a little bit.
It's like a national felony to walk on that.
I mean, there were like armed guards guarding the grass.
What a stadium. You can tell I love that trip. God, I love that.
Want to go back?
Yeah. That was on a TV. They were playing a soccer match at Aviva the other day on TV, and it freaked me out. Like, look at that. Look at that place full. It was beautiful.
All right. When we come back, we're going to take questions in the mailbag. Abby Barmore back from Central City. We'll get her full report on that next. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. And we're back here on the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Steve Sipple, Robin Washut. Let's welcome in the very well-traveled Abby Barmore back from Central City. How was it, Abby? Give us the rundown. What did you think? And the most important question, did you go to Dairy Queen in Central City?
Of course I had to go to Dairy Queen. You're right. It is a very nice Dairy Queen, especially with like the surrounding city that just looks like it was built when the town was built. But Dairy Queen's like very new, and it was awesome. I had to get a Blizzard, of course.
Is that the Dairy Queen in Central City?
Yeah.
There you go.
Oh, who took that picture?
To the left, they have like an original like Dairy Queen sign.
Oh,
so
man.
I thought that was cool too.
Yeah, that's very handsome.
The parking lot's huge.
It's family owned, third generation family owned, by the way. We heard from the proud owners of Dairy Queen last week after our show. So, but
we should say why Abby was in Central City.
Yeah.
Is this you excited?
She did other things besides go to Dairy Queen.
Right.
But yeah, talk about the volleyball match, Abby. What did you think? What was the atmosphere like, and can they keep topping this and finding new creative ways to showcase Nebraska volleyball?
The atmosphere out there in Central City was amazing, and that new facility that they just built, the capacity is like 2,100 people, and it was full. They had people standing right behind me, like it was. They got as many people in there as they possibly could.
You got some knees at the back.
Yeah,
it's like
I might have people
like
kicking
Cameron
my chair.
Indoor Duke game when they're like right on top of you.
Yeah.
Nice.
But it was fun, and everyone was really excited, and there was people coming up to us like, man, we're so happy that they're here in Central City and all these things. But as for the game, I guess maybe the most important part, it was good. They swept Wichita State, and Wichita State actually kept it a little bit close, which was good for them. As for the Huskers, there was a lot of freshmen that really showed what they could do and gave us, bright glimpses of the future. Harper Murray was one of them, actually started an outside hitter over a couple of juniors, Lindsey Krause and Allie Batenhorst. So that was huge. And she hit like 391. So she really went off, and that was fun to see. And there was also people like Lainey Choboy had a lot of big defensive plays, and Bergen Riley, who's in the, I guess, matchup going on for the starting setter job. She did a really nice job and started 2 of the 3 sets. So, there's a lot to look forward to and a bright future there for those young players.
Who would you say does anybody have a leg up in that, in the setter they got to determine a starting setter, right?
Yeah.
Who's got a leg up in that?
Right now, I want to say that it's Bergen.
Interesting.
But,
True freshman. Early
she's a
enrolled.
freshman, and she doesn't have much experience playing at Nebraska. She just has one game under her belt. But she does have a lot of experience playing for USA volleyball. She actually played for the U.S. national team. That's like the highest U.S. team that they have last summer, and set against Canada, and they swept them. So she has a lot of external experience, but so does Kennedy Orr. She's a junior, and she has Big Ten experience and also has done some of those U.S. volleyball things. But on Saturday, I would say that Bergen, the way that she ran the offense was a little bit more consistent, and they hit really well with her. I think both of them were close to 400, and that's great for a volleyball team.
Oh, yeah.
Any word, Abby, on where they could take this game next year?
I think the next place that they're going to try to hit is Ewing. John Cook has talked a lot about how they just built a new high school gym, right? Is it Summer?
Yeah, it's Summerlin Schools.
Summerlin, yeah.
We drove by there, Sip, on our drive back from Ainsworth.
Ewing.
It's a brand new high school. Hausman Construction is built. It's Clearwater, Orchard, Ewing. I think it's all mixed together as one consolidated school. It's really nice. And they have a gym kind of like Central City there, which that would be an ideal, nice new facility. But it's cool. I love that they do that. All right, let's get to the mailbag, though, Abby. What do you have to lead us off with here on the mailbag? All
right, here we go. What are your thoughts on the quarterback room? And do you think the Huskers should grab another quarterback from the portal or just develop the guys they have?
I think they're at the point now where they just have to work with what they have. I just don't know what you're going to find that makes sense when the numbers are this tight for Nebraska right now. I mean, you would have liked to have 4. They don't have 4. They brought in Jack Wolke as a walk-on. It's tough, but you just need 3 anyway. How many? You can only work 3 quarterbacks with your top offense in practice.
Well, who are you going to bring in? That quarterback's going to look at it and say, well, they have their starter. So you're going to have
just like Casey did.
Yeah, you're going to have a very limited pick anyway, right?
Yeah. The only addition that would make sense to me would be the return of a guy like Logan Smothers. Like that would be the only thing that would really make sense because he wouldn't have to get caught up. He's already been there.
But if he wants to start somewhere.
Yeah.
So even Logan,
so the odds of even that happening, it just seems slim to none.
It's really hard to keep quality quarterbacks that aren't starting. Go back to like Noah Vedral. This is a legacy guy. He's from Nebraska. He was with Frost at Central Florida. He followed Frost to Nebraska. He'll never leave.
Right.
He left and he started at Rutgers.
Yeah. I erred. I mean, I thought they had a shot to have Casey Thompson and Sims. I don't know why I thought that. Well, part of the reason is because Charles, his dad, was pretty convincing that.
What month was that, though?
It was December.
What month are we in right now?
Yeah, it's May.
A lot has changed.
Yeah, and like you've pointed out, NIL and the portal have changed this dramatically. I mean, he's actually can make real money going somewhere else, and
he's making real money here, though.
Yeah, but he could start somewhere else.
That's the key.
All right.
He's a 24 to be 25-year-old quarterback. He didn't go somewhere to make a lot of money and sit. He wants to make a lot of money and start.
Yeah. And see, in December, he wouldn't have known there were opportunities, for instance, at Auburn or Florida, which came out of spring, not satisfied with where they were in the quarterback race. So he wouldn't have known that. Then when those things start to develop, when those situations start to develop, the conversation changes.
All right, next one. How does the commitment of Ian Flint affect Carter Nelson's decision?
It doesn't. I think they're going to take 2 tight ends, and Carter Nelson's a different kind of tight end than Ian Flint. Carter Nelson's like almost a receiver that will flex out, but they'll take 2 tight ends. You look at that scholarship distribution chart, there's definitely room for them to bring in 2 this year in the class.
It's interesting to listen to people close to Carter Nelson that raised Carter would, I think he would embrace the idea of playing wide out. But I don't think that'll happen, but he's
a flex tight end.
Definitely a flex tight end.
He's not an inline tight end.
Which
inline tight end, if you're not, that means like with your hand down, blocking at the line of scrimmage, almost like as an extra offensive.
He'll have to do that occasionally for sure.
Yeah, like Chase Androff, he's an inline tight end, almost could be an offensive tackle.
Right.
It was brought up, like there were people asking if he if Nelson could fit like the Bonner role, and it
No,
doesn't seem like that he's that type of
no.
player.
Somebody asked that on our
On the chat. Yeah.
No, he's not that type of player. He doesn't look at all like Bonner.
Mm-mm.
Bonner's a big, thick receiver. Carter's not that.
So they're huge Chiefs fans, the Nelsons, and they love
are.
Travis Kelce.
Okay.
I mean,
There you go.
That's how he wants to
Yeah.
play. Is
Yeah.
like Travis Kelce. All right, what do you got next?
All right, next one. What is the role of Nebraska's new in-house NIL director, and why is that position important?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Obviously the schools don't really control NIL. It's still really controlled by the collectives, and that is still the case here. I mean, the collectives everywhere have the major say as far as the payouts and the money and the operation of NIL as it's structured right now with state laws. Having an in-house director, I just think it's a title. It's somebody that can work as a liaison to the athletes on campus and help them maybe with some direct deals, because there is more things that you can do now as an institution. And I think Trev Alberts wants to make sure they have somebody on campus that can do that, because the collective is a totally different thing than like having somebody on campus.
It's confusing.
Yeah. And I know it's to do things, for one, by the book, make sure you're not breaking any whatever rules or guidelines are with NIL, but also to explore ways that you can diversify your NIL within the framework of the current rules. So like, I know one of the big things that Nebraska has really been pushing their collective to try to do is international players, and try to get them, find different outlets for them to make money through passive income. So a guy like this, like Jonathan Bateman, could find different ways and explore different avenues for, like, say, for an international player to be able to make more money at Nebraska than maybe they previously were. So just having someone to spearhead that, I think, is really important. And it shows another forward-thinking measure Nebraska's taking.
What is passive income?
You can't like be in a commercial, do a radio show, run a camp. You can have your face be put on a t-shirt. Someone sells a t-shirt and they give you money. So you can't actively go make money, like work for the money, but you can get money that's made off of your name, image, likeness.
So Jonathan Bateman, if you're, Jamie Vaughn runs the compliance. He makes just a little bit over 200,000 at Nebraska. Jonathan Bateman was kind of the number two, making 71,000. So I think NIL has become such a big part that you want to have somebody in that compliance carry the title to oversee that. So,
yeah,
I think there was this, the way it was framed up, it was like this is not running the NIL, this hire, like 1890 and the collectives out there everywhere. Those are still the key pieces that you have to have. I mean, if they shut down that part of NIL at Nebraska, they'd be in a lot of trouble, because that is who is paying the players the monthly payouts right now.
The character that could really make this work is Jason Bateman. the character in Ozark. He would be incredible.
Marty Bird.
Marty Bird would be incredible in the NIL world.
Yes, he would.
He would.
It'd be great.
Yeah.
All right, Abby, we got time.
Jason Bateman.
Two quick ones.
Okay. How hard will Matt Rhule hit the portal once the scholarships go down? And will they, if they are still 3 over?
I'm getting the sense they're not really going to. Like, it just, I mean, I say that, and then like by the time we post this show, there'll be some guy visiting campus, but it doesn't feel like they're in a huge hurry because I look at what On3 has in this portal database. There's not much available.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That would help you.
And you pair that with his comments after the spring game,
Yeah.
where he didn't seem like he was like going to get on a plane to start trying to work a transfer offensive lineman. Like, I think if the right guy comes along that they think can immediately help them, sure. But right now, like you said, Sean, I just don't know the odds of that guy coming about and having an interest enough to commit to Nebraska.
It doesn't feel like that at all. I'm with Sean. His demeanor, his attitude toward the portal wasn't aggressive. Let's put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't have that sort of mindset at all. I mean, I think he's very conscious about making sure that his players understand he likes the team. He's always bent that way. And that kind of goes along with this discussion.
Well, and you don't want to force it. And I think what's in the portal now, like at least what you see that's available, a lot of it's a force. Like you'd really be trying to force a player into work that may not work. And then you're going to figure that out pretty quickly when they get here, that this guy's not ready to play. You don't want to bring a guy in that's just going to be a backup.
No, and thus, unless you're talking about a defensive lineman. I mean, there's certain realities, like when we asked Tony White in, I guess it was January. I think it was January. What do you still need? And what's he say? Well, all coaches always look for big men, right? So there's that. I mean, if there's a big man that presents himself and is, I'm talking about defensive tackle now. And I'm not talking about an edge guy. I'm talking about an interior guy. If that presents itself, yeah, you probably take him if he can play. But it doesn't seem like they're on the lookout for much.
Well,
if anything,
you'd almost rather have that available scholarship or two be kicked over to the next year.
Yeah.
Because, Frost, I think, was overly aggressive his first year. They added extra players that maybe they shouldn't have.
Not out of the portal, or
no,
just recruited
transfers and recruits in general, roster additions.
Yeah.
And I think when you look back at it, you would have loved to have those spots for that class of 2019, which was the really good class he had on paper with Wandale Robinson and all those guys. You would have liked to have been able to use those spots then. So it's a delicate tightrope, and Matt Rhule has to kind of figure out what makes sense.
These are fascinating roster conversations. I mean, you had it in your column the other day. 15 members of the class of 2022 are gone. 15 scholarship guys.
And some of those guys exhausted eligibility.
Yeah.
But it really is eye-opening that these guys, 15 players, were here for less than a year.
Yeah. That's a lot. That's a big number.
All right. Hope they had short-term leases. Final question, Abby.
All right, we've been talking about Dairy Queen in Central City. So, what is your favorite Blizzard?
I'm an Oreo guy.
Okay.
Snickers. And there was a point when they took Snickers off the menu for a while.
Is that right?
And actually, I went there to get specifically a Blizzard one night, and they didn't have it. And I tweeted my frustrations about it. Well, the Dairy Queen national handle tweeted back at me apologizing, and then
you are kidding.
When they put it back on the menu, they tweeted at me and
you're
said,
kidding me.
It's back. So I like to think that I personally had a hand in bringing back the Snickers Blizzard.
Well, I don't think there's any question you did.
Yeah, I mean, you're welcome.
Right.
America.
Yeah. I would say cookie dough, but I like dilly bars. I mean, if I go there, if I treat myself, I feel like I did something good in this world, I go get a dilly bar. Red.
How many dilly bars are you going to eat at Minnesota?
I have a couple.
Just two? That's it?
Just
going to cap it at two?
There'll be some nervous.
It's going to be hot. It's going to be delicious. It's not like the cold, snowy.
Rob, how many do you think should I eat? Two seems like enough.
I was going to say 3 to 4.
You know what's really hard to do is
one per quarter
and eat a full hot meal and then justify getting the ice cream. It's like you're like, I'm just screwed if I do this. So you have to kind of
screwed.
You're making a commitment at that point.
Yeah, you are.
You can't be like, all right, I'm gonna get the burger, the fries, the drink,
and
then I'm gonna come back up and get a Blizzard.
Right. You're dictating the rest of your day and probably the next morning.
Yeah. You're just living in deep sorrow, as you hit the gym the next day.
I am living in deep sorrow, by the way.
Yeah.
Is that it, Abby?
What about you?
Yeah. I like the Oreo one, but they also have a chocolate brownie extreme one.
Oh, hello.
Super good.
Hello.
Which one did you get when you were there?
The chocolate brownie
in Central
extreme.
City.
It was good.
Anything with the word extreme in it tied to ice cream is interesting to me.
Was it extreme?
Yeah.
Okay.
It definitely was.
Their ice cream cakes too. That's always kind of a nice alternative. Like when your wife's like, "Hey, what do you want for your birthday cake?" You
like the DQ ice cream cake, huh?
Well, you have young kids. They want to do a cake, blow candles out, and that's a good kind of
safe.
Hey, let's get an ice cream cake.
It's a safety net one.
They're not
for
bad.
Sure. Yeah, they're good. I've played that card before, and it's quick too. You can go get it quick.
When they first come out of the freezer, you need a chainsaw to cut those things,
which is good.
They're rock solid.
Gives you time for when it's just sitting there on the table and you're trying to round up the kids to sing happy birthday and the candles are burning. You need that thaw.
Yeah, that thaw, because they come out like a brick.
Yeah, you could get a blow dryer if you had to.
Put it in the oven.
I was like, you've had one before. All right. When we come back, we'll close the show. It's been a big week for Fred Hoiberg, Nebraska basketball. We got Robin's thoughts on that next. You're listening here to the Husker Online Show. Final segment here of the Husker Online Show. Sean Callahan, Robin Washut, Steve Sipple had a great discussion with Abby Barmore in our previous segment. Want to close the show with some recruiting. Hit on a few football things, but I want to get on basketball right away with Robin because it's been quite a run for Fred Hoiberg. They're now at, according to your latest scholarship distribution chart, 12 out of their 13 spots filled. Josiah Alec, who's younger sister is a Nebraska volleyball player at Nebraska right now. He'll come to Nebraska from New Mexico, Lincoln North Star product.
Yeah, and according to Abby, he was in Central City at the volleyball game. So, writing was on the wall with that one. After his official visit, he was here for the spring game, and it makes a lot of sense. Now, he's not going to be a day one starter. I mean, I guess he could be in certain lineups, but I think his biggest role is just going to be one of, if not the first big off the bench, and a lot of that is going to have to do with Blaise Keita coming off those ankle injuries and the development of Wilhelm Breidenbach. I mean, Alec very much could be the first big off the bench. And in theory, if Nebraska really wanted to go big, they could go Rink Mast at 5, Alec at 4, Gary at 3. And all of a sudden, you've got yourself a beefy front court right there. So starter or not, he's going to be a critical piece to that rotation. Obviously, they also got the day before, they got their point guard, Aaron Eulis from Iowa. So a pretty productive 48 hours there for Nebraska. I know Eulis guys some weren't overly excited about it just because they looked at his stat line, 6 points per game, only 2 assists, were a starter for Iowa, who was one of the leading scoring teams in the country. So like what's going on there? But the guy started 27 games last year for an NCAA tournament team. He's a proven Big Ten level player that he's had his ups and downs like anybody, but he gives Nebraska what they needed in terms of they needed a point guard. They needed someone that can facilitate. They needed someone that can defend on the perimeter, which he has no issue doing. And they didn't need a score. They didn't need to go get Alonzo Verge, some guy that's going to drop 15 a game. What they needed was someone to complement Keisei Tominaga, assuming he comes back, Jamarcus Lawrence, Bryce Williams, Rink Mast, all those guys that they brought in. And so I think that Eulis does that, especially with his experience at this level that Nebraska's playing at. He's not a guy moving up. He's been there, done that, and won at a high level. So those two additions, to me, kind of fit the whole plan for this offseason, which is kind of a continuation of last offseason, where they're not getting the flashiest players in the portal. They're not going to go get the number 1 ranked transfer and play in that game. What they're doing is getting the best available player who is the best possible fit for what they already have on their roster. Whereas before, the past 3 years, or the first 3 years under Hoiberg, they were just getting the best player and hoping it fit together. Now it seems like they're recruiting with a plan,
a fit,
and trying to find guys that fit certain roles and complement one another and are just as good of players as they are people off the floor, where they're bringing that culture and that character that they spent all last year trying to build with Griesel, Bandamel, and the like.
Yeah, Alec and this Iowa guy, they do fit in that. You know who your shooters are. Lawrence is a shooter. Keisei is a great shooter. Yeah, CJ Welch is a shooter. Bryce Williams, the transfer from Charlotte. Those are your shooters. Those are your scorers. You didn't need a point guard, like you said. You didn't need a point guard to come in that role. And Alec doesn't need to be in that role. Alec was a reliable player at New Mexico. He started 32 games. He's very reliable. He's very reliable at Kansas City, too. I mean, 2 years.
He's tough. He's gritty.
Yeah.
I mean, he brings that mentality.
Yeah, he was a 15.6 rebound guy at Kansas City, then a 12.6 rebound guy at Kansas City, and then went to New Mexico, and I think he was 8 and 6, started all the time. Started 32 games. You know what he's bringing. And he doesn't have to be a scorer here.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, I think that's kind of you want to talk about the big picture of what they've assembled so far. And what's crazy, as of recording time, on the On3 team transfer rankings, Nebraska's 4th in the country right now with that 4-man class. Yeah. So, I mean, that can change by the hour based on, further commitments. But as of us talking right now, they're 4th in the nation. And so they're getting good players, but more importantly, they're getting players that fit the core that they were able to establish last year. And that's the biggest difference for me, is it's not just resetting the roster offseason like they've done the last 4 years. They're building upon a foundation that they were able to set last year with Lawrence, Wilcher, Keita, Gary, those types of guys, Tominaga, that you're not starting over from scratch. You have that layer. Now you're supplementing as opposed to completely revamping your roster.
This looks like a team to me, Rob, that can finish in the middle of the pack of the Big Ten. It does.
They have that potential. This is by far the deepest team Fred has had And the Big Ten seems wide open right now,
Yep.
where everybody's going through a lot of roster turnover and turmoil this offseason. So, a lot has to come together. They need these additions to be impact players. Rink Mast, I mean, he's got big shoes to fill.
Yeah, he does.
Bryce Williams has got to come in and be a scorer. They need Tominaga to be the Tominaga from February, March, and not November, December. So there's a lot that is kind of in the balance there, but you can at least create the idea that they've set themselves up to take another step forward.
Oh, I think so.
Where come March, they're talking about being not only a bubble team, but maybe even being a cemented NCAA tournament.
I got to tell you, I think a lot differently if K-State wasn't part of the picture.
Yeah,
but he's
because then scoring suddenly becomes a real question.
Right. You'd wonder a lot more about the offense.
Now, Robin, a couple notable in-state offers made. One from my old neck of the woods, Omaha Bryan, and then one from where I live in the area we live now, Lincoln Southwest. Give us the lowdown on these 2025 offers Nebraska made this week from Omaha Bryan, which they've had some good players there, but they haven't had a guy of that caliber, a high D1 guy out of that program. And I grew up in that area. So, they've had some guys go D1, but nowhere like Nebraska.
Yeah. Amari Bynum.
Say the name.
Amari, like Amari Stoudemire, Bynum.
It's Omar Bynum's kid.
Yeah. Former Iowa State.
Got dunked on by Omar Bynum.
Of course.
We'll revisit.
So he's a big kid who is raw, but there's a lot of potential there. And
how big?
He's in the 6. I guess I don't know for sure. 6'8", 6'9", maybe even taller than that. So, and probably still growing. So he's been on Nebraska's radar for a while. He's unofficially visited a couple times last season, went to some games, and this is a Nate Lenzer guy. Where Nate, the work that he's done scouring the state for these long-term prospects. Mm-hmm. You're talking about 2 offers to 2025 kids, and the first offers for both of those guys. And so Nebraska's getting their foot in the door early on what they feel like are the next crop of high major talent in the state. And the next one the day after, or a few days after, was Braden Frager from Lincoln Southwest. He's a 6'6"-ish wing who can jump out of the gym, freak athlete, and is really having already an impressive spring on the AAU circuit, on the ETG AAU program. So interesting offers, because you don't usually see, or it's rare that Nebraska has offered in-state prospects this early, to where they're the first ones in the door. And it's notable that shortly after Braden Frager got his Nebraska offer, Creighton offered.
Oh,
so
copycats.
if there was any doubt about
Right.
Nebraska reaching on this kid,
right,
that should tell you everything you need to know.
Because he wasn't. Lincoln Southwest obviously had Chucky Love. Is he coming back to Southwest next year?
I believe so.
So
haven't heard any.
They have Chucky Love Jr. and Frager, Jackson Carpenter, who's a D1 athlete.
Wow,
There's some Jabba Chamberlain.
Yeah, Jabba's kid.
Jabba's kids on that team. Carter. So there's some notable.
Yeah, for sure.
So they should be
kids
pretty good
on that Southwest team. But yeah, back to Bynum. Isn't there an Iowa State connection there? Because Omar played at Iowa State. Lenzer, Fred. Do you think there's some kind of inner Iowa State tie with Omar Bynum just from the Iowa State days?
Could be. I don't know anything on that for sure, but that would make sense. With their connections there. But again, this is the guy they identified a long time ago, months ago, to where he's part of a group that made several visits. There's a few kids from Millard North that have made visits and whatnot. But for all the angst and criticism that has gone towards Nebraska basketball for its in-state recruiting, that has completely flipped with Nate Lenzer taking over as their primary in-state guy. And the work that he's done reestablishing those connections with local high school coaches, with
he does it kind of quietly, doesn't he?
Yeah, he definitely doesn't put himself out there,
Uh-huh.
which is fine, because
Right.
he's getting the work done, and he's identifying the Bynums and the Fragers before anybody else.
Yeah.
And he's getting Nebraska to be that first offer. The home state school was these in-state kids' first offer.
Right.
That means a lot, and that's going to carry a lot of weight, especially if these guys end up blowing up a year or two down the road.
All right, lots to keep up with this weekend. Robin will obviously on Nebraska basketball keep everyone up to date on that stuff. He is the man when it comes to we're lucky to have this guy.
Pretty obvious, isn't it? Pretty obvious.
All right.
All right, that's enough.
He ruins a lot of people's weekends when he
Yeah.
drops those.
Yeah.
He is the man with
Right.
covering this Husker basketball stuff, and we're lucky to have Robin. So
Hope
follow
you're paying
Robin
him, Sean.
in his work on Husker Online.
Sif's my agent.
Yes, we'll talk about that later.
Husker baseball this weekend as well. So make sure you check us out. If you're not a subscriber to our YouTube page, download, like, follow us. Also find us anywhere you can find podcasts. And we've got a great special on Husker Online right now. Get access to our site for $30 all the way until August 31st.